Isabella's silent escape. The sound of a life lost. Have you ever wondered what happens when a perfect life crumbles into absolute silence? Isabella, the pregnant wife of millionaire Liam Sterling, had everything a woman could ever dream of. But one day, she vanished without a trace, leaving only an echo. While Liam's ambitious mistress, Clara, celebrated her victory, she never imagined that the man who had everything would break down and weep, not for a lost possession, but for a love he never knew he had. This is the story of how a silent departure created the loudest roar, proving that true wealth is not what you own, but what you cannot bear to lose. Don't let this story disappear. Hit like now and subscribe to our channel. Do you believe that true love can be found only after losing everything? Comment your opinion. Bye. The gold-plated cage. The afternoon sun, the color of expensive champagne, streamed through the penthouse windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like carefree spirits. Isabella Sterling watched them from her velvet chaise lounge, one hand resting protectively on the gentle swell of her abdomen. 7 months pregnant, her body was a landscape of change, a testament to the new life she nurtured within. The baby, her son, was the only pure and unsullied thing in this gilded cage. From the outside, her life was an object of profound envy. She was the wife of Liam Sterling, a man whose ambition had forged a formidable empire in the ruthless world of corporate real estate. Their home, a sprawling duplex overlooking Central Park in Manhattan, was a monument to his success, filled with art that was more an investment than a passion, and furniture too beautiful to be truly comfortable. Her reflection in the polished chrome of a nearby sculpture was warped, a funhouse version of the woman she was supposed to be. Serene, fulfilled, radiant. Instead, she saw the faint violet shadows beneath her eyes that no concealer could hide, and a tension in her jaw that bespoke 1,000 unshed tears. The silence of the apartment was a living entity, broken only by the distant, muffled symphony of New York traffic. It was a silence that had grown over the years, seeping into the cracks of their marriage until it became its very foundation. Liam was not a cruel man, not in the conventional sense. He didn't raise his voice or his hand. His cruelty was that of abandonment, a slow, soul-crushing indifference that was far more damaging. He saw her not as a partner, but as his most beautiful acquisition, a final, polished piece to complete the portrait of his success. He adorned her with diamonds, but never with his time. He filled her closet with designer clothes, but never inquired about the woman wearing them. He had provided the sperm for their son with the same detached efficiency he applied to a business transaction, a necessary step to secure his legacy. Her phone buzzed on the marble side table, a social blog notification, a photo of Liam taken last night at a gallery opening. She had been too fatigued to attend. He was laughing, his head tilted toward a stunning redhead in a green silk dress. Isabella zoomed in. Clara Vega, a promising architect Liam's firm had recently hired. She was sharp, ambitious, and exuded the kind of predatory drive Isabella recognized, because she herself had held it long ago. Isabella had seen the lingering looks, the late-night texts disguised as work, the scent of a different perfume on his suit jackets. She was not foolish. She closed her eyes and, instead of anger, returned to her messy little apartment in the Lower East Side years ago. A younger Isabella, a law student with fire in her belly and a fierce belief in justice, dreamed of working for a non-profit, of being a voice for the voiceless. Then Liam had bulldozed into her life, a force of nature, dazzling her with his charm and the sheer magnitude of his world. She had mistaken his ambition for passion, his possessiveness for love. She had allowed herself to be molded, polished, and placed on this pedestal, slowly forgetting the woman she had intended to be. The fire had been reduced to an ember, and now she feared it was almost out. But the baby changed everything. His small flutters against her ribs were a constant reminder of a life beyond this suffocating luxury. He deserved more than a mother who was a ghost in her own home, and a father who was a stranger. He deserved authenticity, warmth, and a love that wasn't transactional. And she deserved to be the woman who could give him that. That night, Liam came home late, smelling of scotch and Clara's jasmine perfume. He gave Isabella a perfunctory kiss on the forehead. His eyes were already fixed on the stock ticker blinking on the television. "How was your day?" he asked. The question was a reflex, not a genuine inquiry. "Quiet," she replied, her voice even. "Finished arranging the nursery." "Good. Did you order the antique rocking horse from the catalog I left you?" "Yes," she lied. In fact, she had canceled the obscenely expensive order and donated the equivalent amount to a children's hospital. It was a small, secret act of rebellion, but it felt like a monumental victory. He grunted contentedly, loosening his tie. "I close the Hartwell deal tomorrow. It's going to be huge. We should celebrate this weekend, maybe a trip to Miami." He spoke of us, but she knew it was barely an us. She was merely the accompanying accessory. He would spend the weekend glued to his phone, giving orders, while she was expected to sit poolside and look content. She watched him move around the room, a handsome, powerful stranger who shared her bed. The love she once felt had long soured into a hollow ache, which had finally given way to a cold, hard clarity. Ambition, she now understood, could be a cancer. It had consumed him, and it had nearly consumed her. But no more. Later that night, as he slept beside her, in the deep, dreamless sleep of the unburdened, Isabella lay awake, charting her course. Her plan had been months in the making, a secret project of escape. She had been discreetly diverting cash from her allowance into a new account under her maiden name, a name he had probably forgotten. She had researched towns, small and insignificant, places where Mrs. Sterling would never be looked for. She had packed a single suitcase, hidden in the back of her cavernous closet, filled not with designer clothes, but practical items, sentimental treasures, and a copy of an old law textbook she hadn't opened in years. She was not fleeing in a fit of pique. This was a rescue mission. She was rescuing her son from a life of gilded emptiness, and she was rescuing herself from oblivion. There would be no dramatic confrontation, no shouting. That wasn't her style, and it would give him a fight to win. She would simply vanish. An elegant, silent act of disappearance. He would wake one morning, and a piece of his perfect life, his most cherished possession, would simply be gone. Let him rage against the silence. Let the mistress believe she had won. Isabella knew the truth. She was finally setting herself and her son free. 2. The silent disappearance. Liam Sterling woke to the insistent, scheduled whir of his automatic shades retracting. Light flooded the master suite, glinting on the chrome accents and cold glass surfaces he favored. He rolled over, his hand seeking the warm space beside him, and found only cool, crisp Egyptian cotton. He frowned. Isabella was usually the one to wake him, a soft hand on his shoulder, a cup of coffee already waiting on the nightstand. She clung to these small domestic rituals with a quiet tenacity he found both endearing and faintly pathetic. He sat up, swinging his legs over the edge of the bed. "Isabella?" he called, his voice thick with sleep. The silence that answered was absolute, deep. It was different from the usual morning quiet. It felt heavy, deliberate. He strode through the suite, toward the spacious walk-in closet, his side meticulously organized, but somehow looking untouched. He checked the master bath with its twin marble sinks. Her toothbrush was gone. A tiny detail, insignificant, but it sent a strange prickle of unease down his spine. He descended the floating glass staircase to the main living area. The penthouse was flawless as always. The cleaning staff had been in yesterday, but the air was still sterile. Her favorite cashmere throw was neatly folded on the divan, not artfully draped as she usually left it. The book she was reading was closed on the side table, a silver bookmark tucked precisely into the page where she had stopped. It was as if the room had been staged. On the gleaming white marble of the kitchen island, propped against a ridiculously expensive fruit bowl, was a single sheet of thick, cream-colored paper. It was her personal stationery, the kind she used for thank-you notes. His name, Liam, was written on the front in her elegant, looping hand. He picked it up, expecting a to-do list, a reminder about dinner. Instead, the note inside was brutally short. "I'm gone. Please don't look for me." That was all. No explanation, no recrimination, no signature. The words were stark against the creamy paper. He read it again, and then a third time, a cold knot tightening in his stomach. This had to be a joke, a badly conceived, melodramatic prank. Isabella wasn't impulsive. She was predictable, placid. She was the calm water to his storm. She wouldn't just leave, especially now, with the baby coming. His son, his heir. He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over her contact photo. A smiling, sun-drenched shot from a trip to Italy 2 years ago. He looked happy. He dialed. It went straight to voicemail. "Isabella, this isn't funny," he said, his voice strained. "Call me back." "You're it." He tried her mother's number next. A pleasant but firm voice message informed him that Eleanor was on a 2-month cruise through the Norwegian fjords and would be unreachable. Convenient. Too convenient. Panic, an unknown and unwanted emotion, began to creep over him. He tore through the apartment, pulling open cabinets, sweeping back curtains as if she might be hiding behind them. The nursery, once a source of detached pride, now felt like a mausoleum. The tiny clothes, the artisanal crib, the silent mobile. They were all monuments to a future that had just been erased. He saw the empty space where the antique rocking horse should have been. A flash of memory. Him telling her to order it. Her quiet acceptance. He hadn't even bothered to check if it had arrived. His mind raced, checking possibilities. Kidnapped? No ransom note. No signs of forced entry. Medical emergency? He called the doorman, who confirmed Mrs. Sterling had left the building at 5 a.m., carrying a single suitcase. She had told him she was going to visit a friend in Boston for a few days. She had been calm, even smiling. The doorman hadn't thought twice. The cold knot in his stomach hardened to ice. She had planned this. The calm smile, the lie to the doorman, the timing with his mother's trip. This was a calculated, deliberate act. But why? Her life was perfect. He gave her everything. He was building an empire for their son. What more could she possibly want? His phone buzzed. It was Clara. "Thinking of you. Can't wait to celebrate the Hartwell deal tonight." A photo followed. A playful pout aimed at the camera from her sleek, minimalist office. For a moment, he had forgotten. The deal. The celebration. Clara. Did Isabella know about Clara? He had been careful, discreet. But Isabella was observant in her quiet way. Perhaps she wasn't as placid as he had thought. He felt a stab of anger, hot and sharp. How dare she? How dare she throw this in his face? To shame him? To disrupt his life when he was on the cusp of his greatest professional triumph? He typed a reply to Clara. Change of plans. Something came up with Isabella. Family matter. He needed to control the narrative. An unstable, emotional pregnant wife who needed them on space. That was manageable. A wife who had abandoned him. That was a disaster. Clara called instantly. "Is everything okay, darling? Is it the baby?" Her voice was a perfect symphony of concern, but Liam could hear the underlying note of excitement. "She's fine. Just went to visit a friend for a few days. She's feeling overwhelmed," he lied. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. "We'll have to postpone our celebration." "Oh, of course," Clara said. Her tone overflowed with sympathy. "Poor thing. Pregnancy can be so exhausting. Well, if she's gone for a few days, maybe I can pop over and cheer you up tonight. Just a little while." The offer was brazen, but it was exactly what he expected from her. It was part of what drew him to her. Her unapologetic ambition, her directness. She saw an opportunity, and she took it. In that moment, he had no energy to deal with her. "Not tonight, Clara. I need to handle this." "Okay, darling. Call me if you need anything at all." He hung up and looked back at Isabella's note. "Please don't look for me." It wasn't a plea. It was a challenge, a gauntlet thrown down. And Liam Sterling never, ever backed down from a challenge. He would not allow her to simply disappear, to take his son and vanish from his life. She was his wife. She was carrying his child. She belonged to him. The shock was hardening now into a cold, hard, diamond-like resolve. He would find her. He would bring her back. And then there would be a reckoning. He just had to figure out where the hell she could have gone. 3. The hunt and the hardening. One day bled into the next, then into a full, agonizing week. The initial shock and the rage that had fueled Liam for the first 48 hours began to sour into a nagging, unfamiliar anxiety. The sprawling penthouse, once a symbol of his dominance, now felt like an echo chamber. Every silent corner mocked him with Isabella's absence. He found himself wandering into the nursery, outlining the unused crib. The scent of lavender and baby powder she had chosen wafted in the air like a ghost, doing its job of making the unborn child real. He called her friends, the neat society wives he found bland and boring. All were surprised, offering rehearsed sympathies. No, they hadn't heard from Isabella. Yes, they had noticed she'd been more withdrawn lately. They had put it down to pregnancy hormones. Their words were useless. Their concern was a barely veiled appetite for gossip. He checked their joint bank accounts, untouched. He checked credit card statements. Her last purchase was a week ago, at a bookstore in the West Village. He went there himself, a man in a $1,000 suit looking terribly out of place among the dusty shelves. The cashier, a young woman with purple hair, vaguely remembered her. Yes, the sad, beautiful lady bought a stack of travel guides. Oregon, Washington, Maine, and some books on constitutional law. The detail was so bizarre, so out of place, that Liam dismissed it as a red herring. By the third day, his pride was sufficiently shattered for him to do what he should have done from the start. He hired the best private detective money could buy. Mr. Herrera was a former NYPD detective, a man with a reputation as a bloodhound and matching tired, cynical eyes. He sat opposite Liam in the sterile living room, his worn tweed jacket in stark contrast to the minimalist decor. She left her phone on the kitchen counter, disconnected from the network. Her laptop is in her office, wiped. Liam explained, the words clipped. She took one suitcase and her passport. She withdrew $5,000 in cash, the daily maximum, every day for the last 2 weeks from her personal account, an account I didn't know she had. The admission felt like swallowing glass. Herrera nodded slowly, taking notes in a small, leather-bound book. "Smart," he muttered, almost to himself. No digital trace. Cash. Your wife, Mr. Sterling, is either very scared or very clever. She's my wife, Liam snapped. She's pregnant with my son. Find her. The days that followed were a masterclass in frustration. Herrera's updates were grim and concise. Isabella hadn't used a credit card, booked a flight, or rented a car in her name. She hadn't crossed any borders. She had simply stepped out of a yellow cab near Grand Central Station and dissolved into the city's bustling anonymity. She had become a ghost. Meanwhile, Clara's patience was wearing thin. She had initially played the role of the sympathetic, supportive mistress, but her ambitions didn't allow for long-term postponement. She saw Isabella's disappearance as the final obstacle removed, and Liam's continued obsession with finding her was exasperating. "It's been over a week, Liam," she said one afternoon, running a manicured hand over his tense back as he stared out the window at the city lights. She had insinuated herself back into the penthouse, a territorial move he was too drained to dispute. "Don't you think it's time to consider she doesn't want to be found? Maybe she ran off with someone." "Don't be ridiculous," he scoffed. But the seed of doubt, poisonous and unwelcome, took root. Was it possible? Had her quietness been a cover for a secret life he knew nothing about? "Is it ridiculous?" Clara pressed, her voice silky smooth. "She was unhappy. You said so yourself. She's a beautiful woman. Maybe she found someone who could give her what you couldn't." "I gave her everything," Liam retorted, turning to meet her. "Did you?" Clara's eyes were sharp, intelligent. "You gave her things, Liam. A beautiful cage. Maybe she wanted to be seen, not just displayed." Her words cut too close to a truth he wasn't ready to face. He hated that she could read him so well. He pushed the thought away, focusing his anger back on Isabella. The betrayal felt sharper, more personal than any affair. An affair was simple carnal transgression. This was a repudiation of his entire life, his entire world. His work began to suffer. He was distracted in meetings, snapped at subordinates. His mind always drifted back to the enigma of his wife. Where was she? Was she safe? The baby? Was his son okay? The question echoed in the dead night, a terrifying whisper. He had always seen the child as a concept, a legacy. Now, for the first time, he felt a glimpse of something more, a primal protective fear. Herrera called at the end of the second week. "We traced a purchase made with a prepaid debit card, bought with cash near a small town in Ohio. A used laptop. The shipping address was a P.O. box in a rural area near Columbus. When my man got there, the box had been closed for a week. So we're still 2 weeks behind her," Liam said. Frustration, a metallic taste in his mouth, at least. But we found something else. The P.O. box was opened under the name Anna Hayes. Hayes was her maiden name. Anna Hayes, a new name for a new life. She was systematically erasing Isabella Sterling. The coolness of it, the sheer audacity, fueled the narrative Clara had so carefully constructed. He thanked Herrera and hung up, his jaw tight. He looked at the vast, empty penthouse. All the objects, the art, the furniture, they felt like props on a stage for a play whose star had walked off. He had bought all of this to impress the world and to possess her. He saw it now. He had treated her like this apartment, something to acquire, curate, and display. He had never once wondered what lay behind her sad, beautiful eyes. Clara, in her own way, was doing the same to him. She wasn't trying to build a life with him. She was trying to acquire his. The realization was fleeting, quickly buried beneath the easier, more digestible anger. Clara was here. Isabella was gone. He chose the lie because the truth was a mirror he couldn't bear to look into. 4. The collapse. The cracks in Liam Sterling's meticulously constructed world began to show. The search for Isabella had become a consuming obsession, a background process that drained his focus and energy. At work, he was a ghost haunting the main office floor, his mind perpetually elsewhere. The deals he once would have pursued with predatory zeal now felt meaningless. His empire, the monument to his ambition, felt like an empty shell. He started seeing her everywhere. A pregnant woman crossing the street would make his heart clench, only to be followed by a wave of disappointment. The smell of rain on hot pavement would transport him back to their first date, a memory he hadn't accessed in years. He was unraveling, thread by thread, and he didn't know how to stop it. The tipping point came during the quarterly board meeting of Sterling Corporation. It was the culmination of the Hartwell deal, his crowning achievement. It was supposed to be triumphant, powerful, in control. But as he stood at the head of the sleek mahogany table, the faces of his board members blurred. The numbers on the projector screen swam before his eyes. All he could see was the empty space where Isabella should have been, cheering him on from the sidelines, as she always did. Her quiet pride, a stabilizing force he had always taken for granted. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. His carefully prepared speech about profit margins and future growth felt like a foreign language. He gripped the edge of the table. A sudden wave of dizziness washed over him. "Liam, are you all right?" Roberto, a longtime board member, asked, his face etched with concern. Liam looked at the staring faces, men he had known for years, men who respected and feared him, and he felt nothing but a deep, crushing emptiness. The empire meant nothing. The deal meant nothing. He had conquered the world, but he had lost his wife and his child, and he didn't even know why. A hot tear slid down his cheek, then another. He stood there, in front of his board of directors, the titans of industry, and began to weep. Not silent, dignified tears, but wrenching, gut-deep sobs that shook his entire body. It was the sound of a man falling apart. The room fell into stunned, horrified silence. Roberto quickly stood, ushering the bewildered board members out, leaving Liam alone in his glass-walled cage, completely undone. Clara found him there hours later, sitting in the darkness, the city lights shining mockingly outside. The story of his collapse had already spread through their social circle. She had come to do damage control, to save her investment. "Liam, darling," she said, her voice low and cooing. She knelt before him, placing a hand on his knee. "It's all right. You're under an immense amount of stress. Anyone would break." He looked at her with red, sunken eyes. He saw the calculation in her gaze, the ambition that always pulsed just beneath the surface. He saw the carefully applied mask of sympathy, and for the first time, her touch felt alien, repulsive. "She did this to you?" Clara whispered, seizing the opportunity to deepen the rift. "This is what she wanted, to destroy you." But her words had lost their power. The lie, which had been such a comfortable shield, now felt flimsy and false. He knew with a certainty that sliced through his pain that Isabella had never wanted to destroy him. She had only wanted to save herself. The cruelty was his. The neglect was his. The failure was his. "No," he said, his voice raw. He pulled her hand away. It was a small gesture, but it felt seismic. "It wasn't her. It was me." Clara recoiled slightly, her mask slipping for a fraction of a second. Surprise, then irritation flashed in her eyes. This wasn't part of the plan. He was supposed to be angry at Isabella, not himself. He was supposed to turn to her for comfort, cementing her place by his side. "Don't be ridiculous, Liam," she snapped, her voice losing its sympathetic softness. "You can't blame yourself for her manipulation." "Was it manipulation?" he asked, the question aimed more at himself than her. Or was it desperation? Did I ever, even once, ask her what she wanted? Did I ever look at her, truly look at her, and see the person instead of the prize? The truth of it, the shame of it, washed over him. He remembered the law books Herrera had found. He remembered her passion, the fire in her eyes when they first met. A fire he had systematically extinguished with his casual indifference. He had taken a vibrant, brilliant woman and tried to turn her into a beautiful object. And he had been succeeding. Her act of disappearance was not an attack. It was an act of survival. He was crying again. But these tears were different. They weren't for the loss of his possession or the blow to his pride. They were tears of pure, unadulterated grief. Grief for the woman he had never known. Grief for the love he had thrown away. Grief for the child who would be born in some anonymous town, who would never know his father. A father who only now, in his absence, was beginning to understand what it meant to love him. Clara stood up, her face a mask of cold fury. She was an architect of power, and she recognized a faulty structure when she saw one. The man sobbing before her was not the ruthless titan she had set out to conquer. He was just a broken man. "Get a grip, Liam," she said, her voice like ice. "This is pathetic." He didn't even look at her. He simply sat there among the ruins of his perfect life, weeping a loss he was only beginning to comprehend. The mistress, the victor, stood over him, but her prize had turned to dust in her hands. She had never imagined the great Liam Sterling would weep. She was right. He wasn't crying for her, or even for himself. He was crying for Isabella. And in that moment, Clara knew with chilling certainty that she had lost. The quiet sanctuary, 2,000 miles away, where the mist-shrouded pines of Oregon meet the raw, churning power of the Pacific Ocean, Isabella Sterling was gone. In her place was Anna Navarro. The name felt strange and liberating on her tongue. A clean slate. She had found her way to the small coastal town of Cannon Beach, a place of rugged fishing boats, charmingly weathered Victorian houses, and a quiet anonymity that felt like balm to her bruised soul. Her new home was a tiny second-floor apartment above a quiet bookstore, with windows overlooking the Nekanicum River as it flowed into the sea. It was a world away from the silent, opulent penthouse. Here the silence was different. It was filled with the cry of gulls, the distant clang of a ship's bell, and the soothing rustle of turning pages from the shop below. The air smelled of salt, rain, and old paper, a scent she found more intoxicating than any designer perfume. The first few weeks had been a blur of fear and adrenaline. Every siren made her jump. Every look from a stranger felt like scrutiny. But as days turned into weeks, the fear began to recede, replaced by a tentative, burgeoning peace. She had furnished her apartment with second-hand finds, every piece chosen for its comfort and character, not its ostentation. A comfortable, overstuffed armchair, a sturdy wooden table scarred with the history of other people's lives, a quilt made by a local artisan. For the first time in a decade, she was surrounded by things that felt like hers. She had secured a part-time job at the bookstore downstairs. It was owned by Margarita, a woman in her 60s with a cloud of white hair, ink-stained hands, and eyes that held a deep, wise kindness. Margarita hadn't asked for references or questioned the story of the quiet, heavily pregnant woman who had walked into her shop one day. She had simply seen something in Anna's eyes, a love for books, a need for sanctuary, and offered her the job on the spot. "The pay is terrible, the hours are long, and the customers will ask you the most ridiculous questions," Margarita had said, with a wry smile. "But the company is good." She had gestured to the towering bookshelves of novels. "They never let you down." Anna's days fell into a soft, predictable rhythm. She woke early, watched the fishing boats head out in the dawn light, her hands cradling her belly as her son kicked and shifted within her. She worked in the shop, recommending novels, dusting shelves. The aroma of old paper and binding glue became her new reality. She talked to locals, fishermen, artists, retirees, people whose lives were anchored in the tides and the seasons, not the stock market. They were curious but respectful, accepting her as the quiet new woman in town. No one asked about a husband or a diamond ring. They only asked how she was feeling and if she needed help carrying groceries up the stairs. She was rediscovering the woman she had been before Liam, the woman who found joy in a perfectly crafted sentence, who could spend hours debating legal theory, who believed in a world beyond material wealth. The fire she thought had been extinguished was slowly, tentatively, being reignited. One rainy afternoon, as she was shelving a new shipment of books, Margarita brought her a cup of chamomile tea. "You look happier these last few days, dear," Margarita observed, her gaze soft. "The color is coming back to your cheeks." Anna smiled, a genuine, unforced smile that reached her eyes. "I feel lighter," she admitted. "I feel like I can finally breathe. Sometimes you have to travel a long way to find a place where the air fits your lungs," Margarita said wisely. She paused, then added, "This is a good place to raise a child. People look out for each other here." The simple statement, offered without a hint of pity or curiosity, brought tears to Anna's eyes. It was the validation she didn't know she needed. She was not a runaway wife or a tragic figure. She was a woman building a new life, a mother preparing a safe harbor for her son. She often thought of Liam, but the memories became less painful, more distant. She did not hate him. In her new clarity, she mostly felt a deep pity for him. He was trapped in a cage of his own making, a prisoner to the ambition that drove him. She hoped for his sake that he would find a way out someday. But his journey was no longer hers. Her focus was on the future, on the imminent arrival of her son. She had purchased a simple wooden crib from a local carpenter and painted it a soft, sunny yellow. She knit a small blue blanket, her stitches uneven, but full of love. She attended a local prenatal group, sharing her hopes and fears with other expectant mothers. Their backgrounds a tapestry of different lives, all bound together by the universal experience of creation. Lying in bed one night, listening to the rain tap against the window glass, she felt her son give a particularly strong kick. She put her hand on her belly and whispered, "It's just you and me, little one. We are going to be fine." And for the first time, she believed it with every fiber of her being. She had exchanged a gilded cage for a small room with a view of the sea. And in doing so, she had found a wealth that Liam Sterling could never comprehend. She had found herself, and she was finally, truly home. 6. The Tycoon's final surrender back in New York. The fallout from Liam's collapse in the boardroom was swift and brutal. The whispers Clara had so carefully cultivated about Isabella's instability now redirected themselves onto him. The story changed. Liam Sterling, the Titan, was buckling under pressure. His judgment was compromised. The carefully constructed facade of impenetrable strength had shattered, and the sharks were circling. Clara, seeing her future prospects dim with every rumor, shifted her strategy from seduction to damage control, and finally, to desperation. Her plan had been to seamlessly slide into the role of the new Mrs. Sterling, the woman who had saved Liam from his tragic marriage. But the man she was dealing with now was not the confident predator who had drawn her in. He was apathetic, tormented, and worst of all, uninterested in her. She decided a direct confrontation was her only remaining maneuver. She cornered him in the penthouse one evening, dressed not in a seductive cocktail dress, but in a sleek, severe pantsuit, as if preparing for a hostile negotiation. "We need to talk, Liam," she began, her tone clipped and devoid of her usual warmth. He was standing by the window, sipping a glass of scotch, a nightly ritual that had become his only solace. He did not turn to face her. "I'm tired, Clara." "I'm sure you are," she snapped. "But your little performance at the office has created a massive problem for both of us. Roberto is calling for an emergency meeting to discuss your leadership." "Your leadership, Liam? Do you have any idea how much work I've put into this? Into us?" The raw, undiluted greed in her voice finally broke through his melancholy haze. He turned slowly, looking at her, as if seeing her for the first time. He saw the hard ambition in her gaze, the ruthless calculation, and in that moment, he saw a perfect, terrifying reflection of himself. She wasn't his partner. She was his protégé, his image in the mirror. She wanted the power, the prestige, the name. She didn't want him, the broken man in front of her. She wanted the Liam Sterling brand, the brand. "This was never about us, was it?" he said, his voice quiet, heavy, with a kind of weary realization. "It was about you." Clara let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Oh, don't you dare try to take the moral high ground with me. You and I are the same, Liam. We see what we want, and we take it. I wanted you, your world, and I was on the verge of getting it. Don't you think I've earned that?" "She didn't abandon me," he said, the words tasting like truth. "She escaped." "She fled like a coward," Clara spat out, her composure finally cracking. "She left you and took your son." "Did she?" Liam countered, taking a step closer, his eyes clear for the first time in months. "Or did I drive her away? Did I create a home so cold, a life so empty, that running into the unknown with nothing was a better option? Did I ever love her, Clara? Or did I just own her?" He wasn't truly asking her. He was voicing the questions that had been tormenting him in the dead night. He saw it all with nauseating clarity now. Isabella's quiet sadness, her forced smiles, her retreat into a world of her own. They weren't signs of weakness. They were symptoms of his own failure. Clara stared at him, her face a mask of disbelief and rage. This was her endgame, and he was rewriting the rules. "I don't have time for your existential crisis, Liam," she said, her voice dropping to a low, menacing hiss. "You need to control this situation. Issue a statement. Blame Isabella. Tell the world she's mentally unstable and that you are the victim. Reclaim your power, or you will lose everything, and I will not sink with you." It was an ultimatum, a last desperate maneuver. She was trying to appeal to the old Liam, the man who valued power and control above all else. But that man was a ghost. He looked at her, this beautiful, brilliant, ruthless woman, and felt a profound sense of pity. She was still trapped in the game he was finally beginning to see a way out of. "It's over, Clara," he said, his voice expressionless, definitive. "What did you say?" "Our arrangement, it's over. I want you to pack your things and leave. From the firm, from this building, from my life." Clara's face paled. Then it flushed with fury. "You can't be serious. After everything, you choose her? A woman who isn't even here?" "I'm not choosing her," he said quietly. "I'm choosing something else, something better. I'm choosing to stop being the man who deserved to be abandoned." He turned his back on her, a gesture of contempt more powerful than any shout, and looked back at the city. He heard her gasp, a choked sound of pure fury. There was a moment of charged silence, and then the sound of her heels, clicking angrily across the marble floor, the slam of the door echoing through the vast, empty apartment. He was alone, truly alone. The mistress was gone. The wife was gone. But for the first time since Isabella had disappeared, He didn't feel a sense of loss. He felt a strange, terrifying, and exhilarating sense of freedom. He had finally hit rock bottom, and the only way left was up. A new dawn in Vivero. 1 month after the confrontation with Clara, Mr. Herrera requested one last meeting. "The trail is cold, Mr. Sterling," he said, going straight to the point. "She was always 2 steps ahead. She's a ghost, in my professional opinion. I would advise you to stop for your own sake. Let her go." The old Liam would have railed, thrown more money at the problem, refusing to accept defeat. But the man sitting opposite Herrera simply nodded, a strange calmness washing over him. The investigator's words were not a defeat. They were a form of permission to stop fighting a war he had already lost, a war he himself had started. "Thank you, Herrera," he said, his voice even. "For everything." The search was over. Isabella was truly gone. Instead of the crushing despair he had anticipated, Liam felt a quiet sense of peace. The frantic energy that had consumed him for months dissipated, leaving a vast, tranquil space in its wake. The obsession had been a shield, a way to avoid looking at the wreckage of his own life. Now there was nothing left to do but survey the damage. He started small. He sold the penthouse. The gilded cage held too many ghosts, too many reminders of his failures. He moved into a smaller, nondescript apartment downtown, a place with warm wood floors and walls. He filled not with investment art, but with photographs of his parents, his sister, a childhood he had left behind long ago. He began the slow, painful work of repairing the relationships his ambition had corroded. He called his younger sister Sarah, who he hadn't spoken to in over a year. He apologized without excuses or justification. The silence on the line was long, and then her voice, thick with emotion, said, "I've missed you, Rich." It was a start. He retired from the day-to-day operations of his company, promoting a capable executive to take his place. He found that the relentless pursuit of the next deal, the next conquest, no longer held any appeal. The board, having witnessed his collapse and subsequent retreat, was relieved. He was still the owner, but he was no longer the king. He started walking the city, not with a destination in mind, but just to see it, to feel its rhythm. He noticed the street musicians, the laughter of children in the parks, the small, everyday human dramas he had been blind to from the tinted windows of his chauffeured car. On a Saturday, on a whim, he walked into a soup kitchen, a place he previously would have only engaged with by writing a large, tax-deductible check. At first he was clumsy, a man in a cashmere sweater completely out of his element. But he was put to chopping vegetables, his hands, more accustomed to signing contracts, becoming calloused and raw. He listened to the stories of the people he served, stories of hardship, loss, and incredible resilience. He felt a sense of connection, of shared humanity, that his wealth had always insulated him from. He was changing. The grief for Isabella and his child had not vanished, but it had transformed. It was no longer a frantic, angry obsession, but a quiet, persistent ache in his heart, a reminder of the man he had been and the man he was trying to become. He wasn't doing these things to find her or to earn her forgiveness. He was doing them for himself. He was trying to build a life that the woman she had become might not have needed to escape. He thought of the child. His son would be almost 2 now. Liam pictured him in his mind, a toddler with Isabella's serious eyes and perhaps his own stubborn chin. He wondered if the boy was happy, if he was loved. He knew with a certainty that brought him both pain and comfort that with Isabella as his mother, the answer was yes. He had missed the birth, the first steps, the first words. He had forfeited the right to be a father, but he could still become a good man. Perhaps in the end, that was a kind of redemption. His heart, once closed off and armored, was slowly, painfully opening to a world he had never truly seen. 3 years passed. The new Liam Sterling was a quieter, more reflective man. His business still thrived, but remotely, managed by others. His life was simpler, his wealth a tool for quiet philanthropy rather than a weapon of ego. The ache in his heart for his lost son and the wife he never truly knew remained, but it had settled into a part of his landscape, a sad, beautiful feature that reminded him how far he had come. He was in Boston for a conference on sustainable urban development, a passion project he had become deeply involved in. The conference ended a day early, and he found himself with a rare, unstructured 24 hours. On an impulse he couldn't explain, he rented a car and began driving north, toward the coast. He didn't have a destination in mind, just a pull toward the ocean, toward the vast gray expanse of the Atlantic. He drove through forests of towering pines, the air growing cooler, tinged with the scent of salt and damp earth. He ended up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, a charming, historic town, clinging to the hillside where the river met the ocean. He felt a sense of peace there, a feeling of being at the edge of the world. He walked the waterfront, watching the seagulls cry, and felt a strange sense of belonging, of stillness. He wandered down the town's main street, filled with antique shops and small cafes. A bookstore with a quaint hand-painted sign reading "Margarita's Books" caught his eye. He walked in, the chime of a small bell announcing his arrival. The interior was warm and cluttered, smelling wonderfully of old paper and wood smoke from a small stove in the corner. He browsed the shelves, his fingers tracing the spines of well-loved novels, and then he heard it, the voice of a woman, soft and clear, reading a children's book. "The moon is high, the stars are bright. Sleep now, little one, and dream of the light." The voice was achingly familiar. His heart began to pound, a frantic hammering rhythm against his ribs. He moved slowly, cautiously, toward the children's section at the back of the shop, and there she was. She was sitting in a small rocking chair, a toddler with a mop of dark, curly hair nestled in her lap. It was Isabella, but it was also not Isabella. Her hair was shorter. Her face was bare of makeup, marked with fine lines around her eyes that spoke of laughter and worry. She wore a simple sweater and jeans. She looked real, grounded. The fragile, porcelain beauty of Isabella Sterling had been replaced by the vibrant, warm presence of this woman, Anna. The toddler in her lap looked up, and Liam's breath caught. The child had his chin, his dark hair, but his eyes were all hers. Large, serious, and intelligent. This was his son. She finished the book and closed it, kissing the top of the child's head. She looked up then, and her eyes met Liam's across the cluttered bookshelves. For a long moment, the world stopped. There was no shock on her face, no fear, just a flicker of recognition followed by a deep, quiet sadness. And then, something that looked like acceptance. He didn't know what to do, what to say. The script he had rehearsed 1,000 times in his mind, of anger, of pleading, of demanding, vanished. That script was for a different man, for a different woman. She stood up, gently taking the child's hand. "Leo, this is an old friend of Mommy's," she said, her voice steady. Liam knelt, bringing himself to the child's eye level. "Hello, Leo," he said, his voice thick with unshed tears. "It's nice to meet you." Leo stared at him with his mother's solemn eyes. Then he gave a shy smile. "Isabella, Anna," he spoke then, his voice quiet. "What are you doing here, Liam?" It wasn't an accusation. It was a simple question. "I don't know," he answered honestly. "I think maybe I was looking for a quiet place to be. I didn't know I was looking for you." They stood in the silence of the bookstore, the air thick with unspoken years of pain, growth, and change. "He's beautiful," Liam whispered, his gaze fixed on Leo. "He is," she agreed softly. "He's happy. He's safe." It was both an affirmation and a reassurance, a certainty that she had made the right choice. He finally looked back at her, at this woman, who was both a stranger and the most important person in his world. And he knew this wasn't a moment for grand gestures or dramatic reunions. This wasn't about reclaiming what he had lost. That life, that marriage, was over. They were now two entirely different people, shaped by the separate paths they had traveled. "I'm sorry, Isabella," he said, and the name felt foreign now. "For everything, for the man I was, for not seeing you. I'm so profoundly sorry." A single tear slipped down her cheek, but she wasn't sad. It was a tear of release. "I know, Liam," she said. "I forgave you a long time ago." The ending was not what he had envisioned. There would be no triumphant return, no reconciliation. But as he stood in that quiet bookstore, looking at the woman his wife had become and the son he was meeting for the first time, he felt a profound sense of hope. This was not an end. It was an unforeseen, quiet connection, a chance, perhaps not to rebuild what was broken, but to build something new, something honest, from the ground up. It was a quiet, unexpected, and deeply inspiring beginning. The story of Liam and Isabella shows us that true growth often begins only when we have the courage to let go of the life we planned. Their journey wasn't about finding their way back to each other, but about finding their way back to themselves. If their story of transformation and second chances has moved you, please like this content so it can reach more people. Share it with someone who might need this message. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life romantic fiction that explores the depths of the human heart. Thank you for watching.
Helena jolted awake, her head nestled against the shoulder of someone unfamiliar. For a brief instant, he found himself disoriented, unsure of his surroundings. The soft glow of the airplane's interior, the gentle hum of the engines, and the unfamiliar face that regarded her with a blend of astonishment and warmth left her feeling unsettled. "Apologies, it's my fault," she murmured, straightening herself and brushing her fingers through her tousled hair. "No need to fret," he said in a soothing tone. It appeared that he required some time to recuperate. Helena sprang from her first-class seat, having dozed off unintentionally. How had he found himself in that situation? The final memory that lingered in his mind was the moment he walked toward the bathroom, following the unsettling words of Ricardo's menacing message. "Matthew!" He burst out, a sudden thought of his son striking him. At this moment, a flight attendant rushed over. "Madam Ramirez, your son is experiencing difficulty with his breathing. The team aboard stands united with him." A chill coursed through his veins. Helena dashed down the corridor, eager to reach the economic section where she had left Mateo. He discovered him gasping for breath, as a flight attendant assisted him with an inhaler. "Mother!" exclaimed the boy, breathless. "Take a deep breath, my dear. Inhale deeply and exhale gently." Helena knelt beside him, striving to manage her rising anxiety. He grasped the inhaler and guided his son in its use. "Did you remember to pack the emergency medication?" "In my bag." Helena rummaged through Mateo's backpack with urgency, but the medicine was nowhere to be found. "It seems that Ricardo likely removed it during the visit," he whispered through clenched teeth, barely containing his fury. "Is there anything we can assist you with?" the flight attendant inquired. "We require priority landing," Helena replied, the lawyer surfacing amidst the anxious mother. "My son suffers from chronic asthma, and his father has chosen to cancel our health insurance as a means to coerce me into a divorce. I lack access to his emergency medications." Unbeknownst to her, the man on whose shoulder she had drifted into slumber was now upright, observing the unfolding scene from the hallway. Just hours earlier, Helena was meticulously going over the documents for the case she was set to represent in Buenos Aires. This marked his initial significant chance following the separation. Ricardo, her former spouse, had gone to great lengths to undermine her career, reaching out to past clients and associates to damage her professional standing. A message caused his phone to vibrate. "If you believe you can whisk me and my son away to Argentina without facing repercussions, you are sorely mistaken. I have already consulted with my attorney regarding changes to custody arrangements." Helena inhaled deeply. Ricardo had always remained indifferent to the idea of custody for Mateo, until she started to piece her life back together. It was merely another method of exerting power over her. As the aircraft trembled from the turbulence, Helena found herself losing her footing in the aisle. He sank into an unoccupied seat in first class, beside a man in a suit engrossed in his computer work. "Pardon me," she remarked, rising swiftly to her feet. "Of course," he replied, his smile warm and inviting. "Everything good?" "Indeed. Thank you." He made his way back to his seat in economy class, where Mateo lay peacefully asleep. The journey was essential. "I would advocate for a woman in an international custody dispute." He couldn't help but notice the irony. Eventually, worn out and her thoughts muddled by tension, Helena made her way to the bathroom. Upon her return, bewildered in the dimly lit cabin, she found herself in the incorrect seat. He was unaware that it was the identical seat beside the gentleman in first class. The weariness from months of legal battles, countless sleepless nights, and persistent anxiety engulfed her. In mere moments, she drifted off into a deep slumber. Javier Herrera took note of the woman resting in the adjacent seat. It was unusual for a passenger in economy to find themselves in first class, yet the dimly lit cabin and her evident fatigue told a different story. He chose to let her sleep undisturbed. As her head lay gently on his shoulder, He contemplated shifting her position, yet the weariness etched on her face held him back. From her open purse, legal documents and a photo of a beaming child peeked out. Javier found himself captivated by this woman, who unmistakably bore a significant weight upon her shoulders. In that moment, witnessing her struggle alongside her son, he began to grasp a fragment of the weight she carried. "We will be landing in 30 minutes, the flight attendant announced to Helena. "Medical personnel are on standby." "Thank you," Helena replied, grasping Mateo's hand. "All will be well, my dear. I assure you." He remained oblivious to the fact that Javier had quietly returned to his seat, speaking softly on the phone. "Carlos, please reach out to Dr. Mendez in Buenos Aires." "Absolutely, it's pressing. Intense childhood asthma. I seek the highest quality care possible." "Absolutely not, anonymous. Utterly untraceable." The arrival in Buenos Aires unfolded in a chaotic rush of sirens, medical staff, and Helena's pounding anxiety as she sprinted beside the stretcher bearing Mateo. "Are you the one who gave birth?" a physician inquired as they stepped into the medical facility. "Indeed, I am Helena Ramirez, his mother." "What medications do you typically use?" As they dashed through the pristine corridors, Helena articulated the circumstances with clarity. He stated that the insurance was no longer active and that he couldn't cover the entire cost of the treatment. The physician shared a glance with a fellow practitioner who appeared to be anticipating their arrival. "Let's set that aside for the moment. The hospital offers a program tailored for situations similar to yours." Helena found herself swept away by this sudden stroke of fortune, leaving no room for doubt. The following hours unfolded with a series of tests and treatments, bringing a sense of gradual relief as Mateo began to show positive signs of recovery. "Mom, will I be all right?" Matthew inquired when he would be able to converse normally at last. "Indeed, my dear. These physicians are exceptionally skilled." As Mateo took a moment to rest, Helena reached out to her parents residing in Buenos Aires. "Mom, I'm going to take Mateo with you as we discussed, but he experienced an asthma attack on the plane. We find ourselves in the hospital." "Oh, my dear. Is my grandson doing well?" "It's improved, but I can't be with him constantly. I need to get ready for the Mendoza case, and the hearing is just 3 days away. No need to fret. Your father and I will look after Mateo while you focus on your work." Upon the doctor's return, she presented Helena with a package of medicine. This represents the pinnacle of treatment options for childhood asthma. Typically, it comes with a high cost, yet the hospital has chosen to incorporate it into the care program. However, I have yet to complete the applications for support. The physician wore a mysterious smile. In urgent situations, the wheels of bureaucracy can turn more swiftly. 2 days later, as Mateo recuperated with his grandparents, Helena threw herself into her work in the modest office she had temporarily secured in Buenos Aires. The situation revolved around a mother whose former spouse had unlawfully taken their daughter to Argentina. Her own fears about Ricardo fueled her motivation significantly. "Mr. Ramirez, there's a call for you from Mexico," the receptionist at the building announced. It was Lucia, the sole companion from the law firm where she was employed in Mexico City. "Helena, Ricardo stopped by to inquire about your case in Buenos Aires. It seems he might be seeking details to leverage against you." "I'm not surprised," Helena said with a sharp edge to her voice. "He has this fixation on dominating my choices, even though he never truly cared about Mateo. Exercise caution. He claims that you left your ailing son behind for your job." Helena shut her eyes, holding back her fury. "Mateo is staying with my parents during his recovery, and I am representing a mother who experienced precisely what Ricardo is now threatening to do to me." Once she ended the call, Helena opted to enjoy a coffee in the hotel lobby, seeking a moment to gather her thoughts. As he sat there anticipating his order, a voice he recognized drifted through the air. "License Ramirez." It was the man from the plane, the one who had allowed her to rest her head on his shoulder. "I apologize, but your name escapes me at the moment." "Javier Herrera," he said, offering a warm smile. "How is your child doing?" Helena felt a wave of astonishment that he had retained that detail in his memory. "I appreciate it more than you know. The doctors demonstrated remarkable efficiency." "It's wonderful to hear that. May I join you?" There was an element in his manner of speaking, one that conveyed respect and lacked the condescension she had encountered among Ricardo's business acquaintances, prompting Helena to nod in agreement. In the weeks that followed, these serendipitous meetings grew increasingly common. Helena found out that Javier was in Argentina for business tied to his pharmaceutical company, even though he rarely discussed his professional life. "What types of literature do you enjoy exploring?" he inquired one day. "Garcia Marquez, Isabel Allende," Helena replied, a smile gracing her lips. "Now, my reading is limited to legal codes and judicial precedents." "Even in the darkest times, we must not forsake literature," Javier declared. "It serves as a reminder that alternative realities exist beyond our own." Meanwhile, Helena found herself captivated by Mateo's medical treatment. Upon reaching out to the hospital for information regarding expenses, she learned that all costs were taken care of by a mysterious foundation. "Is there any possibility of finding out who backed it? I want to express my gratitude to you personally." "I apologize, Mrs. Ramirez. In these instances, confidentiality is paramount." Helena reflected on Claudia, a wealthy ex-friend who might have stepped in, yet their communication had ceased long ago. Little did she know, Javier continued to keep a close eye on Mateo's development via Dr. Mendez. She had conducted an investigation into Helena, uncovering how Ricardo Fuentes, a well-connected businessman, had methodically stifled her professional growth throughout their marriage and persisted in doing so even after the divorce. "What you're accomplishing is truly remarkable, especially given the challenges," Javier remarked to his assistant upon discovering that Helena was nearing victory in her case. "Plan a festive dinner at the hotel restaurant to mark the conclusion of the hearing." One afternoon, while Helena meticulously crafted her closing arguments, an unexpected text message arrived from an unknown sender. "I am aware that you are in Buenos Aires with someone else. Do you believe the family judge will look favorably upon your actions? I will re-evaluate my custody claim should you return and accept my terms." With quaking hands, Helena severed the connection. Ricardo had always exhibited this behavior, dominating, scheming, skilled at transforming his minor triumphs into losses. This time, he resolved otherwise. This time, he would triumph in the courtroom and safeguard his son. Unbeknownst to Helena, her encounter with Javier was anything but serendipitous. The man who was capturing her interest harbored secrets that had the potential to alter the course of her life. "Victory is ours," Helena declared, exiting the courtroom with a beaming smile. The judge mandated that the girl be promptly returned to Mexico alongside her mother. Sofia Mendoza wept as she embraced the photograph of her daughter. "I appreciate your acknowledgement, graduate. I appreciate your understanding." No one else was willing to lend a hand. Helena experienced a powerful wave of feelings. Countless women named Sophia existed in the world, ensnared in harmful relationships, mothers battling against systems that favored the wealthy and powerful. This triumph was not solely attributed to Sophia. It was equally for her own sake. Upon exiting the courthouse, Helena found a message waiting for her. "Let us commemorate your triumph. I'll be waiting for you at the mouth at 8 p.m., Javier." In the last month, her interactions with Javier had shifted from being casual to purposeful. He appreciated his presence, the way he listened without passing judgment, and how he discussed literature and art with genuine simplicity. It felt like a soothing relief after enduring years with Ricardo, who dismissed her passions, labeling them as mere pastimes for those lacking true ambition. That evening, Helena selected a dress that was both understated and refined. He struggled to recall the last occasion when he had adorned himself for the sheer joy of it, rather than out of necessity. With Ricardo, his look was essential. With Javier, it was a decision. The eatery exuded warmth, offering glimpses of the vibrant Boca neighborhood. Javier awaited her arrival, his smile radiating warmth and illuminating his eyes. To the virtuous lady, he declared, lifting his glass high. For new beginnings, she replied. The dialogue unfolded effortlessly. Helena shared with him the story of her family, revealing how her father had passed away during her teenage years, leaving her mother as the sole provider. Perhaps that's the reason it was so difficult for me to part ways with Ricardo. My mother devoted herself entirely to our well-being. He believed it was essential to endure for the sake of giving Mateo a complete family. At times, what appears to be an essential sacrifice can actually be a snare, Javier remarked. At the age of 20, I experienced the tragic loss of my parents in an accident. My younger brother experienced a respiratory condition akin to Mateo's. Without proper treatment, he paused, and Helena noticed the anguish reflected in his gaze. I deeply apologize, she murmured, instinctively reaching for his hand. It was ages ago, Javier replied, softly holding her hand. However, it transformed my viewpoint on what is truly significant. Helena sensed a bond that transcended mere attraction. Something about Javier struck a profound chord within her. Perhaps it was the collective grief, or perhaps it was the manner in which they had both been compelled to reconstruct their lives. Yet, a quiet whisper within cautioned him about the rapidity with which he was revealing himself. You hardly know him, the voice that echoed with a familiar maternal tone cautioned him. Carmen Suarez. She had expressed herself clearly in her last call. My dear, you have recently emerged from a difficult union. Exercise caution before entering into a new relationship, particularly with someone you are not familiar with. You have a thoughtful nature, Javier noted. I just recalled something my mother used to say, Helena smiled, her concern for me evident. Mothers have a sixth sense for trouble, he quipped. What did he say to caution you regarding me? I can't quite grasp your true identity, Javier appeared to stiffen a bit. And who do you believe I am? Just as Helena was about to reply, a graceful woman glided over to her table. She stood tall, clad in a black dress that radiated exclusivity, embodying an aura of confidence and authority. Javier, my dear, what a delightful surprise to see you here, she remarked, resting a possessive hand on his shoulder. Gabriela, he replied, clearly uneasy. I had no idea you were in Buenos Aires. Farma Herrera's urgent concerns. You are already familiar with the experience of guiding the vice presidency of the most significant company in Latin America. He bent down and pressed his lips against Javier's in a fluid, effortless motion. He turned his gaze toward Helena, as though he were seeing her for the very first time. You haven't introduced us. Helena Ramirez, Gabriela Torres, Javier stated with a hint of detachment. Ramirez? Gabriela squinted her eyes. Ah, the attorney involved in the international custody matter. Javier has shown a keen interest in your situation. He even looked into your former spouse. What is his name? Ah, indeed, Ricardo Fuentes. Helena sensed a chill creep through her veins. Have you looked into Ricardo? He inquired of Javier straightforwardly. Helena, may I elaborate? Gabriela pressed on, seemingly relishing the experience. And that unique consideration for your son. Javier consistently displays remarkable generosity with the products from Farma Herrera. The initiative was his brainchild, you see, even though he typically isn't so intimate in his choices. The elements align seamlessly, creating a captivating enigma. The astonishing medical treatment. The serendipitous meetings. Details regarding your situation. So, you're the one behind Farma Herrera, Helena whispered, recalling the emblem on Mateo's prescriptions. Yes, but that's not. Helena rose suddenly, her voice firm. You looked into my background. You looked into my former spouse. You took care of all this, didn't you? The gatherings, the healthcare assistance. What more can you discern about me without my input? Allow me to clarify. Clarify what? That you've been pulling the strings of my existence ever since you witnessed my fragility on that plane. The restaurant appeared to center on him. She was overwhelmed by the same wave of nausea that had washed over her during those times when Ricardo dictated every detail of her existence, when he scrutinized her phone, when he interrogated her friends about their whereabouts. That's not the impression you might have, Javier attempted to clarify. So, what are my thoughts, Javier? His voice quivered. Are you aware of that as well? Gabriela observed with a smile that she struggled to keep hidden. Very well, I shall let you continue your discussion. Javier, let's discuss the contract with Brazil tomorrow. Helena grasped her bag. I believed you were unique, he uttered, his voice trembling, yet you're merely another influential figure convinced of your entitlement to dictate the fates of others. He exited the restaurant, overwhelmed by a sense of suffocation as if the walls were closing in on him. The crisp night air of Buenos Aires failed to ease the overwhelming sense of suffocation. She had fled from one gilded prison with Ricardo, only to discover another, seemingly more benevolent yet equally confining. As she made her way to her hotel, tears clouded her sight. She felt foolish, innocent, but above all, she felt a deep sense of betrayal, for this time, unlike with Ricardo, she had truly started to let her guard down. He vowed to himself, as he stepped into the taxi, that this would be the last time. She had endured Ricardo Fuentes, she would endure Javier Herrera, and this time she wouldn't allow anyone else to come near enough to inflict pain on her again. The journey back to Mexico was excruciating. Elena focused intently on the work documents, purposefully disregarding each call and message from Javier. She felt utterly foolish. He had permitted his barriers to weaken, allowing hope to trickle through the fissures in his worn heart. Encountered the same error once more. I reflected as the aircraft shook, placing my faith in a figure of authority. After arriving in Mexico City, he discovered 3 voice messages from Javier and 1 from Ricardo. She listened to her ex-husband's first. Now you find yourself mingling with Javier Herrera. Ricardo's voice oozed with malice. It's quite remarkable that you can neglect our ailing son yet still manage to enjoy dinner with one of the wealthiest businessmen in Latin America. The judge will be quite eager to learn about the funding for Mateo's new treatments. Elena experienced a wave of nausea. What was the source of Ricardo's knowledge about Javier? The solution was clear. In the realm of commerce, the word was spreading rapidly. It's likely that someone noticed her dinner with Javier and had something to say about it. The following days unfolded like a labyrinth of red tape. Ricardo officially submitted his petition to alter custody arrangements, citing concerns of maternal neglect and raising doubts about Elena's moral integrity. That's a terrible joke, Lucia remarked, glancing over the lawsuit in the cramped office they occupied together. Ricardo Fuentes discussing ethics. The individual who kept you apart from your loved ones and companions for an extended period. But he has money and connections, Elena replied, massaging her temples, and now he's suggesting that I have a benefactor who covers Mateo's treatments. The phone rang once more. It was Javier. Once more. Will you ever consider responding to him? Lucia inquired. There's really nothing to discuss, Lucia looked into my background. He delved into the details of Ricardo. He orchestrated everything for. I can't even fathom the reason. And if you chose to listen to it, providing an explanation doesn't bind you to any obligations. At last, Elena picked up the phone when Javier called, driven more by fatigue than by any real desire. Thank you for your response, Elena. His voice conveyed a true sense of relief. I must clarify something for you. There's no need for an explanation, she responded with a chill in her voice. I'm grateful for the medical assistance provided for Mateo, but I have no further requests from you. Honor my boundaries and choices, a concept my former spouse never grasped. Kindly, just 5 minutes. Javier, I'm already overwhelmed with the challenges posed by a domineering figure in my life. I don't require an additional one. Farewell. 2 days later, an envelope arrived at his office. Within the envelope lay a handwritten letter accompanied by documents pertaining to a foundation dedicated to children suffering from respiratory ailments. Elena started the letter. I understand and respect your choice to refrain from communicating with me. I simply wish to share the truth with you. Indeed, I organized treatment for Mateo. Indeed, I looked into Ricardo, not as a means of control, but rather as a way to ensure your safety. My younger brother passed away because he did not receive the appropriate care for his asthma. Upon witnessing Mateo in that predicament, I felt compelled to take action. I acknowledge that my approaches may have crossed boundaries. I simply aimed to assist without creating a sense of obligation. All about Gabriela. She was once my fiancée, but that was many years ago, and we parted ways long before now. What you witnessed was her effort to undermine something she viewed as a danger. I sincerely regret the harm that has been done. I will honor your boundaries. Elena placed the letter in a drawer, her emotions swirling within her. A fragment of her being yearned to trust him. Another aspect, the one Ricardo had conditioned himself to be wary of, stayed vigilant. The initial custody hearing felt like a surprise attack. Ricardo put forth evidence suggesting possible negligence. Images of Mateo during his time in the hospital. Images of altered dialogues. Accounts from those close to her indicated that Elena placed her professional ambitions above her responsibilities as a mother. Mr. Ramirez's lawyer contended that her focus on revitalizing her social life has led to a disregard for our son's well-being. During a dinner with a millionaire in Buenos Aires, the minor experienced a severe asthma attack. The strike was subtle yet deliberate. Elena held her ground, showcasing her own proof of Ricardo's domineering actions and the way he had spitefully terminated the family health insurance. The hearing concluded without reaching a definitive conclusion. The judge arranged for psychological assessments and monitored visits as additional information was collected. The initial supervised visit proved to be a complete failure. Ricardo devoted the whole time to probing Mateo about his mother's new acquaintance, causing the boy considerable stress. As Mateo stepped back into Ricardo's house, he was suddenly gripped by another asthma attack. Elena was in the midst of her work when the call came in. Mrs. Ramirez, your son is currently in the hospital, the social worker conveyed. During the visit with his father, he experienced an attack. Upon his arrival, the hospital was engulfed in chaos. Ricardo stood there, pretending to care in front of the medical team, yet his eyes shot daggers at Elena. Had you cared for him as you should have, this wouldn't have occurred, he whispered as they brushed past one another in the corridor. You terminated his insurance, Ricardo. You questioned him relentlessly until he had an episode, she replied, suppressing her fury. Is there a problem? A familiar voice inquired. Elena glanced over to see Javier, impeccably dressed in formal attire, holding a briefcase. What brings you here? She inquired, perplexed. Licenciado Herrera, he said, offering a card to Ricardo, the legal advisor for Mrs. Ramirez. Ricardo squinted, his gaze sharpening. So now you represent him in court. Handy. Mr. Fuentes, Javier replied with a composed demeanor, I am aware that you intentionally terminated Mateo's health insurance following the divorce, which qualifies as parental negligence under Article 323 of the Civil Code. Additionally, I possess evidence of your efforts to undermine Ms. Ramirez professionally, including emails sent to her colleagues and clients. Ricardo's complexion drained of color. That constitutes an invasion of privacy. However, it's not the case when the recipients of those emails choose to deliver them willingly, Javier replied, as he opened his portfolio. I also possess the recording from today's visit, where you applied psychological pressure on a minor with a pre-existing medical condition. Elena observed the interaction, captivated. She was unsure of how Javier had acquired that information, but its impact was instantaneous. Ricardo recoiled. "This isn't finished," he warned before departing. "What about Mateo?" Javier inquired once they found themselves alone. "Stable now. Thank you for whatever it is you just did." "I simply spoke the truth, Elena. It's the only thing I've ever desired to pursue." Their eyes locked, and in that moment, following the tumultuous dinner in Buenos Aires, Elena sensed that perhaps, just perhaps, she ought to hear him out completely. 6 months can alter the course of a life. For Elena, those months were filled with profound change and unwavering resolve. With the legal pressure from Ricardo momentarily alleviated due to Javier's intervention, he could focus on launching his own practice dedicated to domestic violence and family law cases. A modest space in the Roma neighborhood, featuring 2 desks and a secretary shared with another attorney. It wasn't extravagant, but it was his own. Ramirez y ni Asociados, Family Justice. The unassuming sign at the entrance declared. "It's perfect, Mom," Mateo remarked, his asthma now managed effectively through consistent treatment. "Does it appear that way to you?" "It's modest in size when you consider your dad's company. But here, people aren't afraid to smile," the boy replied, showcasing the insight that only children of divorced parents possess. Elena embraced her son, fighting back tears. There were moments, such as this, when every ounce of effort felt justified. The initial client arrived on the recommendation of Lucia, a young woman whose bruises were inadequately concealed beneath layers of makeup. "I can't afford to pay much," the woman cautioned. "We have a pro bono program," Elena replied. "Please share your situation." Before long, the small firm started to see an influx of similar cases. Elena toiled through demanding days, yet for the first time in years, she sensed she was truly impacting her surroundings. One day, as she examined the lease agreement for the premises, she stumbled upon something intriguing. The rent was significantly lower than the market rate. Upon his inquiry, the administrator clarified, "This building is owned by the Nuevo Amanecer Foundation. They provide affordable spaces for professionals engaged in community services." Elena was unfamiliar with the foundation, and her lawyer's intuition compelled her to dig deeper. He found that it had been created merely 6 months prior, oddly aligning with his quest for a venue. Since the event at the hospital, he had not been in touch with Javier. He honored her need for distance, confining his communication to a folder containing all the evidence against Ricardo, which she utilized to counter her ex-husband's threats. This separation allowed him to ponder. His initial fury transformed into bewilderment, and ultimately into a hesitant respect for how Javier navigated the circumstances, supplying resources without dictating outcomes, valuing her independence while extending a helping hand. "Mom, could we ask Mr. Javier to come to my school recital?" Mateo asked one afternoon, catching Elena off guard. "Why would you want to invite him? You hardly know him." "I write letters to him," the boy admitted, his gaze dropping. "And he responds, sends me books about science, and explains things about asthma that are scary, but he makes them seem normal." Elena was left without words. "Since when?" "From the hospital. He shared his email with me and encouraged me to reach out with any questions about my illness, as his brother had experienced it too." A week later, Elena arranged a fundraiser for her pro bono program, securing a small venue and gathering former colleagues along with potential donors. To his astonishment, the turnout exceeded his expectations. As the event unfolded, he expressed his gratitude to the attendees and caught sight of a man named Javier lingering in the back of the room. Not one of the VIPs and not seeking the spotlight, he quietly observed from a distance. Once Elena concluded her speech, she navigated through the crowd until she found him. "I wasn't expecting you," he said, his voice steadier than his emotions. "I stand behind meaningful initiatives," he continued, "and yours certainly qualifies." He offered a faint smile, reminiscent of the New Dawn Foundation. "You looked into it, I'm a lawyer," that's my job. An uncomfortable silence hung in the air. Matteo mentioned the letters. Elena finally broke the quiet. I hope you don't mind, that was never my intention, she interjected. It has taken me some time to grasp this, but now I recognize the distinction between control and support. Ricardo controlled to restrict, while you supported to foster growth. Javier's expression brightened with anticipation. Elena, regarding what transpired in Buenos Aires. Not here, she replied, aware that several guests were watching them with interest. Can we discuss it later? Javier nodded and quietly departed. Just as Elena was about to search for him at the event's conclusion, her mother made her entrance at the door. Carmen Suarez, with her signature flair, approached Elena. Mom, what are you doing here? Elena asked. I thought you were looking after Matteo, your son is with Lucia. I came because I needed to share something important with you face to face. Carmen gently took her daughter's arm and guided her to a secluded corner. I have been in touch with Javier Herrera. Elena sensed the ground trembled beneath her. That? Why? Initially, it was because Matteo requested my assistance. He needed help with sending his letters, but then I stumbled upon something important that you ought to be aware of. Carmen detailed how Javier had been providing anonymous guidance to Elena's law firm via the foundation. He had diligently collected evidence against Ricardo for months, always adhering to legal boundaries. He was adamant about keeping his identity hidden, believing that Elena should triumph based on her own strengths. Why didn't you mention it earlier? Because you required time, my dear. Time to mend, to demonstrate that you could be independent. And he recognized that. He was never one to pressure or seek acknowledgement. Elena recalled Javier's letter, the reference to her brother, the charity for children suffering from respiratory illnesses. Your brother passed away from asthma, correct? Carmen nodded. Miguel Herrera, aged 15. His parents were unable to afford specialized treatment. Javier, at 20, was attending university. I toiled and learned, yet it fell short. Following the tragedy that claimed his parents a year later, he vowed that no child should endure a similar fate if he could help it. How do you know all this? Because he mentioned it to me while we were anxiously awaiting news from Matteo at the hospital, Carmen replied. It was not a tale of wealth-flaunting generosity. It was the heartfelt revelation of a sibling still grappling with grief. Tears welled up in Elena's eyes. Everything aligned perfectly. Javier's instinctive response to Matteo's asthma attack on the plane, his sincere concern for the child's health, the underlying connection. And there's one more thing, Carmen interjected, retrieving an envelope from her purse. Matteo has been creating this. Inside were several children's illustrations. One depicted 3 figures holding hands, labeled Mom, Me, and Javier. Another illustrated a plane with 2 individuals asleep, accompanied by an arrow stating, "This is where it all began." I never told him to keep his distance because of Matteo, Elena whispered. I did it out of fear. Carmen held her daughter's hand tightly. It's natural to feel fear after what you went through with Ricardo, but remember, not all men are alike. Some genuinely want to support you without trying to dominate your life. As Elena stepped out of the room, she found that Javier was already gone. The only remnant of his presence was a single note, "When you're ready to talk, if you ever are, you know where to find me." For the first time in ages, Elena sensed she was prepared for something beyond mere survival. She was ready to embrace trust once more. The Mexico City International Airport buzzed with its usual lively energy. Elena navigated the bustling crowd with a sense of unease, glancing at her watch repeatedly. The location he had picked held a significance that now felt painfully clear to her. Perhaps even a bit cliché. And if he doesn't come, he pondered, biting his lower lip. His message had been succinct. We need to talk, where it all began. 5 p.m., Javier replied with a straightforward, I'll be there. He paused at the boarding gate, the same one he had passed through on his flight to Buenos Aires nearly a year prior. The flight that altered the course of their lives. "Here I am," came a voice from behind him. Elena turned to see Javier, more gaunt than she recalled, with dark circles beneath his eyes hinting at restless nights. He wore a casual outfit, a departure from the formal suit he typically donned. "Thank you for coming," she said, a wave of uncertainty washing over her. "Would you like to take a walk?" They moved through the hushed atmosphere until they stumbled upon a somewhat tranquil cafeteria. Once they settled in, steaming cups of coffee placed before them, the heaviness of their unvoiced thoughts felt almost suffocating. "I talked to my mother," Elena eventually broke the silence. "He mentioned your brother Miguel." Javier cast his gaze downward at his cup. "Miguel was exceptional. I aspired to become a doctor, focusing on respiratory diseases." Ironically, a melancholic smile appeared on his face. "When he passed away, something shattered within my family. My parents. The accident a year later felt almost predestined, as if they had surrendered their caution. I deeply apologize, Javier. When I spotted you on that plane, weary, battling by yourself," he went on. And then Mateo, caught in the grip of his asthma attack, found himself reliving the entire ordeal once more. "I made a hasty decision. I acknowledge it. I ought to have been upfront from the start about my identity and my intentions to assist. What held you back?" Javier exhaled heavily. "People often alter their behavior towards me based on my surname and financial status. Some offer compliments for their own gain. People form opinions about me without truly understanding who I am. Your remarkable independence and dignity in the face of challenges inspired me to connect with you beyond the usual barriers that my role imposes. I realize it was selfish." Elena nodded, absorbing his words. "Upon discovering your true identity and realizing you had delved into my past, I felt a deep sense of betrayal," she admitted. "Ricardo governed every facet of my life. He scrutinized my phone, questioned my friends, undermined my job prospects. I spent years coming to the realization that this was neither protection nor love. I never sought to dominate you, Elena." There was an unmistakable honesty reflected in his gaze. "I simply aimed to support you quietly, allowing your brilliance to take center stage. I needed some time to grasp it," she confessed. The distinction between control and support can often be obscured when one has become accustomed to the mistreatment. A thoughtful hush enveloped them. Outside, aircraft ascended and descended, transporting individuals to fresh horizons, to renewed opportunities. "Mateo has been longing for your presence," Elena finally expressed. "And I responded to him. He is a remarkable young one. He has been sketching our family, and you appear in those illustrations." Javier looked genuinely taken aback. "Elena, I do not seek to claim a position that is not rightfully mine. I have consistently honored your boundaries and your independence." "I understand," she responded, gathering her resolve. "And that is exactly why I am here, because you have accomplished what no one else has, standing by me unconditionally, assisting me without belittling me, honoring me without claiming me." For the first time in the conversation, Elena reached across the table, taking Javier's hand. "I'm not sure how much I can contribute," he continued. "I am on a journey of healing, gradually discovering the path to trust. I carry fear, scars, and a son who must come first. I don't request anything beyond what you can or will provide," he responded, softly squeezing her hand. "We can take our time, free from pressure and expectations. Are you open to beginning anew, with complete honesty and no assumptions?" "I would be delighted to," Javier beamed. "Let me take a moment to present myself in the right way. Javier Herrera, 36, is the owner of a pharmaceutical company he built from the ground up after experiencing the loss of his family. He has a deep appreciation for Garcia Marquez and is a quiet champion of those causes that often go unnoticed." Elena chuckled, sensing a burden ease from her shoulders. "Elena Ramirez, 33, is an attorney focused on family law, a devoted mother to an incredible child, a survivor of a toxic marriage, and is discovering that seeking help is a sign of strength, not weakness. The ensuing weeks became a journey of rediscovery. Javier encountered Mateo in a formal setting, this time as Elena's friend rather than a hidden supporter. Their days were filled with explorations of museums and parks, followed by cozy dinners at Elena's home. There were neither lavish jewelry nor high-end dining establishments. Javier realized that her true appreciation lay in authenticity, rather than the opulence that Ricardo had wielded as a means of manipulation. Carmen observed the progression of this relationship with measured approval. One afternoon, as Elena and Javier cooked side by side, their laughter filled the air, and she leaned in to whisper to her daughter. "This one prefers you to be self-reliant. He desires to stroll alongside you. What makes you so confident?" Elena inquired. "He gazes at you when you believe he's unaware, and he beams with pride when you accomplish something on your own. Ricardo's expression darkened when you displayed your independence. Javier honors your resilience." 3 months later, during a trip to the zoo, Mateo dashed ahead to catch a glimpse of the elephants, leaving them briefly on their own. "I love you," Javier said plainly, without much flourish. "Not due to what you require from me, but because of the essence of who you are for yourself." Elena sensed a warmth blossoming within her chest. It was not the intense thrill he had once confused for love in his younger days, but rather something more enduring, tranquil, and simultaneously profound. "I love you as well," he responded. "It fills me with fear." "Fear comes with the territory," he said with a grin. "It signifies that something significant is on the line." He grasped her hand while they observed Mateo enthusiastically gesturing towards the animals. "Have you heard what Mateo shared with me yesterday?" Elena remarked. "He appreciates my presence when you're here. He mentioned that he smiles more often. He is an exceptionally perceptive child. He mentioned that he appreciates your demeanor when you believe no one is observing." Javier raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "So, how would you describe me?" "Gentle with those we don't know. Calm and composed. Embrace the now." Elena beamed with joy. The significant aspects that Ricardo never embodied. Ricardo had ultimately surrendered his efforts to secure custody, as the evidence collected by Javier loomed over him, threatening to unveil his secrets to the world. Their previous encounter had been short and unexpectedly cordial. Maybe he had discovered a reason to transform, or perhaps he had merely encountered yet another struggle to confront. As the night enveloped the world, Mateo lay peacefully asleep, while Elena and Javier found themselves on the modest balcony of their apartment, lost in thought, gazing at the twinkling city lights. "Do you recall that time on the plane when you dozed off against my shoulder?" he inquired, somewhat distantly. "I was utterly exhausted, to the point where I can hardly recall the moment I took a seat." "It was the moment I fell in love without even knowing it," Javier admitted. "Not due to your appearance, but because of the significance you embodied. Power, grace, perseverance. Seeing the photo of Mateo peeking out of your bag, I was truly enchanted by your remarkable capacity for unconditional love." Elena leaned her head against Javier's shoulder, instinctively evoking the memory of their initial encounter. "Who would have thought that fatigue could mark the start of something so exquisite?" he whispered. "At times, we must let down our barriers to allow the light to enter," he said softly, pressing a tender kiss to her forehead. Under the vast, twinkling sky of Mexico City, Elena came to realize the distinction between being saved and being supported. Ricardo had attempted to save her in order to claim her. Javier strolled alongside her, offering his hand when she sought support, releasing it when she was ready to soar on her own. In that fragile equilibrium of autonomy and togetherness, of individual resilience and mutual openness, both discovered a treasure beyond any wealth, the chance to love freely, unburdened by fear. A year later, the Mexico City International Airport found itself at the center of yet another pivotal chapter in Elena's life. This time, she walked with purpose, unburdened by worry. This time, I found myself in a cozy family circle, making our way to the boarding gate, filled with laughter. "Are we there yet?" Matteo, now 10, asked, his voice bubbling with a blend of eagerness and restlessness. "I have held on to this secret for a full 2 weeks. When we're on the plane," Javier vowed, gently tousling the boy's hair with warmth. "The intrigue lies in the unknown." Elena observed the exchange with a serene smile. The Ramirez and Asociados law firm expanded to include 5 attorneys who specialize in family law and domestic violence matters. Her pro bono program garnered national acclaim, and she recently triumphed in a landmark case that established a precedent for women facing circumstances akin to those she had once endured. Javier's transformation had been remarkable as well. He transformed Pharma Herrera to focus on advancing research in childhood respiratory diseases. The Miguel Herrera Foundation, established in memory of his brother, offered complimentary treatment to children from underprivileged families. "What occupies your mind?" Javier inquired, observing her thoughtful demeanor as they prepared to board. "Regarding all that has shifted since our last journey together," she responded. "Even though, at that moment, we were unaware of our connection. I realized it the moment you drifted off on my shoulder," he grinned. "My heart understood it before my mind did." The flight was unexpectedly headed to the Riviera Maya, a delightful surprise from Javier to commemorate the first anniversary of their official relationship. Matteo felt a surge of excitement. This would mark his inaugural journey to the ocean. Once airborne, the boy retrieved his drawing notebook, an item he consistently had by his side. With a focused intensity reminiscent of youth, he started to sketch lines that quickly transformed into form. An aircraft, silhouettes of people, a narrative conveyed through visuals. "What masterpiece are you creating, champion?" Javier inquired, bending closer from his seat. "The tale we share," Matteo replied effortlessly. "What made Mom drift off while you were talking? What led you to discover your feelings of love without even noticing it?" Elena and Javier shared astonished glances. "How do you know that?" Elena inquired. "Grandma Carmen shared the entire tale with me," Matteo said, his eyes focused intently on his drawing. "He mentioned that often genuine love arrives when we are too weary to uphold the barriers we construct around our hearts." "Your grandmother has a gift for storytelling," Javier remarked, captivated by Carmen's insight. "He claims he merely reflects what he has observed in reality," Matteo elaborated on his artwork, "and that you embody the notion of second chances." The illustration depicted the precise moment from that initial night, with Elena resting on Javier's shoulder on the plane, him gazing at her with a look of astonishment and something more, something they could now recognize as the emergence of a profound emotion. "You are capturing that moment better than a photograph," observed Javier. "I am not just drawing what was seen," Matteo explained with a clarity that only children possess. "I'm illustrating the emotions within." Elena grasped Javier's hand, their fingers weaving together. She had chosen not to wear an engagement ring, they had mutually agreed that the formalities could be postponed. Their connection transcended any ordinary emblem, founded on a profound respect, unwavering honesty, and the realization that genuine love neither possesses nor controls, instead, it empowers and uplifts. "At times, I ponder," Elena whispered, "how something as seemingly trivial as dozing off in an unexpected spot can alter the course of a whole existence." "It wasn't the wrong place," Javier corrected gently, "it was exactly the right place, it's just that neither of us knew it at the time." Matteo continued drawing, now adding a sequence that illustrated his own journey, the asthma attack, the enigmatic treatment, the secret letters exchanged with Javier, the foundation, and, ultimately, the 3 of them together as they are now. The view from the plane window revealed a breathtaking sunset, as the sky was adorned with vibrant hues of orange and purple. Elena leaned her head on Javier's shoulder, this time with intention, echoing that first moment but now imbued with the depth of their shared experiences. "Are you aware of what makes all of this so stunning?" she inquired. That you failed to rescue me. You were there as I found my way back." Javier pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. And you rescued me, even if you're unaware, from a life where achievements overshadowed genuine relationships. Mateo, seemingly unaware of the dialogue around him, immersed himself in his creation. In the final panel of his illustration, he included an element that caused Elena to gasp. The trio, hand in hand, gazed toward a horizon illuminated by the rising sun. Below, in his youthful yet resolute script, he penned, "A weary mother drifts off atop a millionaire, and he unknowingly falls in love." The most beautiful love story ever told. Elena and Javier exchanged smiles at the innocent yet spot-on description. High above, where fate had once brought them together, they now soared side by their own decision. In that contrast resided the essence of their tale's beauty. What started as a chance occurrence born from fatigue evolved into a deliberate choice to embrace one another daily, with all the flaws, anxieties, and aspirations that came with it. The aircraft pressed onward through the vast expanse above, transporting not merely 3 individuals, but also 3 souls who had discovered that second chances, grounded in honesty, can blossom into something more exquisite and enduring than the most enchanting of stories.